welcome to Psychedelics. Today this is Psychedelics Weekly with David Drapkin and Alexa Jesse. How you doing, Alexa?
I'm good. It's good to be here with you, David.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I've got a cold and allergies and I sound a bit crappy. I'm also just rushing around like a complete idiot in my life. I'm going to be honest with you here. Alexa just handled me exploding coffee all over my laptop and office. And yeah, I was just thinking, why am I rushing so much? I'm constantly racing through life, and yeah, need to slow things down is where I'm just holding. But my life is a little bit all over the place because I'm kind of moving and selling the house and just tons of stuff happening. So that's where I'm holding, and I'm just looking forward to chatting, to be honest, with you. So hopefully folks enjoy listening. Where are you holding in life, in reality at the moment?
Yeah, there's a lot to take in, a lot going on. I'm doing a lot of my own personal healing work, a lot of healing opportunities that have kind of come up both with psychedelics and without psychedelics. And I don't know, though, I'm definitely trusting the divine timing of things and, learning to surrender and try to just be grateful for what we have. You're going through a crazy time, but, how fortunate are we for just what we have and where we are. So yeah, I'm excited for you to get through this madness, because I just really landed in my new space and it's the best. Like once you kind of finish all the craziness, we just got like new pieces of furniture. We're actually hosting events here. And it feels so good to finally settle. So just like keep imagining yourself in Israel and, in your new space and how amazing it's going to be, because it will be.
Amen. Beautiful. Yeah, I'm enjoying having a cleaner house than usual because we're kind of getting it ready for open houses. So it's like, oh wow, this is nice.
Yeah, I bet.
Services. I love that you do events at your place. That's so cool.
Yeah, I've just started to. We actually had an event on Thursday, had about 30 people. What was really amazing, it was actually all about psychedelics and cannabis education. We had some like hemp brands pop up and educators. And what was really interesting was the majority, or like at least half the people that showed up, were women in their 60s and were really just so interested in learning about microdosing and cannabis. And, they grew up with the movement happening, but I don't think those specific women were really part of the hippie movement. They saw it. They were like, I don't know about that. And now they're really curious. And it made me realize that there's not a lot of brands or even like us, people creating content for that demographic. So it was really cool to hold space and hear the questions they had and just learn like, okay, there's a lot of information that, we can create to reach all new audiences. So many people are interested. So yeah, it was really amazing. I actually met this Jewish woman from Brooklyn who lives in San Francisco, who now I have someone to do holidays with. So I'm very excited because I have not been a good Jew since I moved to San Francisco. So I will be spending some holidays with her moving forward.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Don't want to get too Jewy, but do you know about the tradition on Shavuot next week to eat cheesecake?
No. I don't.
Oh, yeah. So I only discovered this amazing ancient tradition of the mystical Jewish people to eat cheesecake on the festival of Shavuot. So
okay.
That's next Friday. So definitely, when I first started getting back into it, I was like, what? That's the tradition? That's our ritual that our ancestors passed down to us? We just eat cheesecake? It's like, yeah, that's it. I was like, okay, I'm in.
I'll have to look into it. I'm vegan, but I actually know some really good vegan cheesecake places in the city, so we can make that happen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to share a couple of things with folks before we jump into our news articles. One is a New York City event that I'm going to be part of at Psychedelic Assembly. It's also known as the Athenaeum, their kind of library and co-working space. June the 8th, 7 o'clock. It's with myself, Rad Siraj, Juliana Mulligan, and Ifatayo Harvey. And it's called Tales of Transformation. And we're talking about how our experiences with psychedelics have led to kind of new life realities unfolding kind of professionally and personally, but also looking at intentions after the medicine. So after we have the medicine, what new intentions or what kind of new realizations and trajectories and energies kind of manifest out of that. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. If anyone wants to come, it's a pretty small event. There'll be a cacao ceremony at the beginning as well. So yeah, get your tickets fast, because it's I think only 50, 60 people. Go to psychedelicstoday.com/events.
That's amazing. I wish I could make it, but I can't wait to hear all about it.
Yeah, how about you? Anything fun you want to talk about before we dive in?
Yeah. So we have a new partnership to announce that I'm excited about. Hemp Lucid is a CBD hemp brand based out of Utah. And I met the owner, Chase, actually at our event in LA in, I guess, the end of March. And yeah, they're doing really incredible work, not only in the products that they make. I've tried a lot of their different products, but they make everything like capsules, tinctures. They're family owned, but they're also, what's amazing about the company themselves is they're offering ketamine therapy to their employees. So they're really trying to forward the movement in Utah, actually, and by, practicing what they preach. And yeah, I actually interviewed him. So in a couple weeks or months, you'll get to hear more about what they're doing. But for now, definitely check out hemplucid.com, and you can use code psychedelics10 for 10% off. And if you are new to CBD, hit me up. I love educating people on CBD because it's been really transformative for my own personal life. So yeah, that's
we should talk more about that. I've been microdosing CBD for a few months, and it's kind of gone into a more chilled mode now. But the first few months, it was really transformational. Like my body, mind, soul and energy levels was really reacting to it. And I found myself in a kind of a state of flux, transitioning into kind of just having the CBD in my body. So yeah, I'd love to chat with you about that more.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like CBD had its hype moment, and then I think people are like kind of over it. And I feel like I could see that happening. It's not happened yet, but with psychedelics, it's like there's all this hype around it. It's like just because there's hype with CBD and it's being kind of sold everywhere, it's like, no, there's still real benefits, and there's definitely like better quality products you can find and tons of education. So yeah, I'm passionate about weaving cannabis and CBD into the psychedelics narrative because I think it's really connected.
Yeah.
And they can be used together.
Yeah. Beautiful. Me too. Anything else before we dive in? What do you reckon?
Well, I do want to give a shout to Tracy T for getting on Dr. Phil. I don't know if our listeners got to see the show. There's about a 25-minute segment where she kind of was attacked a little bit. She wasn't exactly sure that the situation was going to be what it was. But the biggest takeaway, we brought her back on. She's the founder of Moms on Mushrooms, and Victoria interviewed her, did a little Q&A on Instagram Live last week, so you can check that out on our account. But my biggest takeaway was how interesting it was that they really just attacked her for being a mom. And it's like they're not talking about alcoholic dads and how what terrible of an example that sets for your kids, or even any other person or parent. It was really pointing at like, this is irresponsible for your kids, what you're teaching them. And I just saw that, on the show, the other side of the coin was like a woman who lost her son to opioid overdose. And so she's coming from a real fear-based place that was clearly rooted in the war on drugs. And anyway, there's just such a lack of education and understanding. And I thought it was very fascinating. These are conversations we need to be having. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, I didn't see that, and I don't really know anything about Dr. Phil apart from seeing him like on a TV advert. But I read an article by Saba Kandari in Entheo Ventures. He's got a Substack, and I think he works with Tracy T. And it was a really interesting article, kind of showing almost culturally where we're holding right now, and where does just really mainstream media come into it, and missing quite a lot of the nuances and complexity. It's so easy to miss what psychedelics are and how they can help people. And in a sense, the complexity of having a meaningful relationship with psychedelics, and not just to see them as, these scary, dangerous, horrific drugs that we've been taught about. Thanks for mentioning that. I'd love to check that out. All right, well, let's dive in. The first article we're going to chat about is from summitdaily.com, and this is coming out of Colorado. It is titled "Dylan Man Accused of Selling Psychedelic Magic Mushrooms Claims He Was Gifting Them Under Colorado's New Proposition," and the author was Ryan Spencer. And so, yeah, long and short, folks, this is a man who was selling mushrooms, or so it is alleged, kind of in a public place. And he was questioned by cops, and then eventually they, looked inside his bag, found mushrooms, and I think he had a note or a receipt from somebody. And yeah, they've arrested him, and potentially this could be a Class 3 drug felony, punishable by 2 to 4 years in prison. So let's break this down. There's a few different angles I think we could probably look at this. Where do you want to start, Alexa?
Man, there's a lot here. One point I thought was interesting was that this man was in some sort of shopping center, so he was definitely being pretty bold with, sales. But the cops got called on him. So for me, that just is showing us more we were talking about, like the fears that like someone was wanting to get this person in trouble for what they were doing. And I think my biggest takeaway with this one is, we have to be careful. People who want to sell, like, it's not legal. It's a plant, whether we think it should or should not be okay. And if it's decriminalized, like the fact that this man could go to jail for 2 to 4 years, like that's real time. It's not nothing. And yeah, I'm just seeing people getting bold in California for sure. And so I think it's just a reminder for people that like you're not invincible, and I'm just protective of, real medicine sharers who want to share this medicine. They're not necessarily just trying to make money off of selling mushrooms. They want to gift and share and receive compensation, and that is illegal. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it just exposes a lot of the kind of ludicrous nature of drug laws, doesn't it? In so many ways, like it's legal to possess and to share, gift it, but yeah, no money is allowed to change hands. So this gentleman did have a sign that said "free hugs and mushies." So and there's some places in Manhattan where I've been, where they sell cannabis. They're not licensed and regulated, but they give you cannabis for free, but you buy something else, and so like you buy a chocolate bar for $50 and they give you free cannabis, just to get around this law. So it's just a bit ludicrous, and it's going to be years, I think, before all of this really evolves in the way that it should. But at the same time, I think there's just some common sense out there, around
right.
how to do this in the right way and in the right place, and maybe with different signage.
Right.
And yeah, it just makes me think, gosh, if you're literally in a shopping mall with a sign, anyone can come up to you and buy mushrooms. And do you want anyone to have it? Like, it exposes you to a lot of risk, for sure. But who, do we want every single human being in this town or in this shopping mall to be, taking psychedelics right now or at the weekend? I don't think so.
Totally. That's a great point. And I think it also highlights people are struggling right now. We are in troubling times. So both the end users like looking for solutions, and who knows who would purchase from this person. But then also that person who maybe would not be as bold. Maybe they really need the money, and it's like, it's a risk they're needing to take. So that's really scary. I think dealing drugs has always been a last resort, for people who don't have other options. And so that's where marginalized communities really become, the target. So yeah, I think ideally for people who want to distribute this medicine before it's legal, it's like, you got to be careful and smart. Like, and to your point, like, if you don't know if someone should be consuming this medicine or not, like, you probably shouldn't be selling it to them. Realistically, that is our stance. Like, harm reduction is, I think it's huge, obviously. So yeah, I hope that he, gets off. One thing I did read in the article that was interesting is, I guess you can gift mushrooms. So that is allowed. You are allowed to gift mushrooms. So he was claiming he had accepted donations to a nonprofit, But then he was like, I'm the nonprofit. So I would say potentially if you have a nonprofit and want to gift mushrooms and accept donations to your nonprofit, I think that would be technically legal, according to the article at least. But I don't know too much about that.
Yeah, that's not legal advice. And
no,
and
it's
this
not.
article made me think, Alexa, like how much is this guy going to have to pay a lawyer to potentially avoid jail? And a lot of people can't afford lawyers. And hopefully there's going to be a cool psychedelic lawyer in Colorado. There's tons of them that we know that's going to say, oh, hey, let me look into this for you. But gosh, this is going to go to court and it's going to take a lot of stress as well as money. So, yeah, it's just bonkers.
Agreed.
Agreed, yeah. All right, what's next?
This one... PsyPost.org, psilocybin therapy for depression appears to have a curious effect on the brain's response to music. This was really interesting. And it sounds like it was a follow-up study. So there was one study previously done that showed some kind of similar effects on this specific part of the brain that responds to music. But I loved this article. I'm a musician, and I was just telling you I'm on week 4, actually. Tomorrow is my 4th ketamine session, 4 weeks in a row. And I realized very quickly, music is part of the medicine in a psychedelic journey. I mean, it really does dictate. And they even told me, after session 3, I was like, that one was more intense. The music was kind of intense. And they're like, yeah, that was intentional. I was like, oh, okay, got it. But this study was actually not necessarily focusing on the effects of the music during the trip. It was afterwards. So 19 participants with moderate to severe depression, and they had 2 therapy sessions, a low dose, and then a week later, a high dose. And then they got a functional MRI a week before the session and then the day after the second session. So just, measuring brain activity, and found increase in what's called ALFF in brain regions involved in music processing compared to after therapy. So my biggest, or what I thought was really incredible about this one was it basically found that the pleasure center of the brain, or music invoked pleasure ratings, were associated with improvements in what's called anhedonia. So basically a symptom of depression that's characterized by a lack of pleasure in normal pleasurable activities. So for me, that's really powerful. It's for people who are not finding joy in normal in activities that should bring them joy, the psilocybin therapy was showing to help that, to increase joy in activities that should bring us joy, but for whatever reason, depression is suppressing. So that was really powerful to me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was trying to understand this, and I read it, and I did get some of it, and I really like the work of Matthew Wall. So just want to shout you out, Matt, because you've done some amazing stuff around it, neuroimaging and psychedelics. He really is, I think, top notch there. It made me think about music, and how it seems to almost be saying that there's a correlation between the response of the brain to musical stimuli and the antidepressive effect of the psychedelic. So not causation, but correlation. And so what we're trying to do in psychedelic therapy is come up with new measurements and outcome scales to rate people's experiences and efficacy and outcomes of the psychedelic experience. So in a sense, it's saying that, people's responsiveness to music has a correlation to antidepressive effects, in reduction of anhedonia. And it also just made me think second about experiencing psychedelics and what can that do for our appreciation of kind of sensory perception, so sight and sounds and tastes and in a sense just life itself, really appreciating being alive and kind of the wonderment of reality. So it made me really touch into that and think, we do see things and hear things a little bit differently afterwards. And I also would guess that probably it helps the music to continue neuroplasticity as well after the medicine work. So if there's certain kinds of music that you can listen to, and they've also shown with this in another research study, just doing like a CBT computer program for 5 minutes a day, where you're kind of looking at happy faces and you tap stuff on your computer to reinforce that, it actually leads to improved neuroplasticity over weeks and months. So I really feel like there's certain music that helps us to be happy. What you were saying is really, really key during the medicine session is where does that music take us? And in our Vital lecture today, we had Bill Richards was lecturing yesterday, so we had our study group today talking about the lecture. And he was talking about music being such a key part of that, and how it's kind of really guide you. And he was thinking of us as a practitioner as the kind of the midwife, helping the patient to birth their experience of new consciousness through the psychedelic journey, and how music is, in a sense, is the soundtrack to that birthing process. It's not all supposed to be beautiful flowers and gentle stuff. There's a real value to intensity, and we were saying as the students today, sometimes it can get quite like clangy and like there's these artificial sounds of stretching and kind of really birthing. A lot of the sounds that have helped me in my journey it's like this birthing sound, and it really, I think, helps to penetrate on a cellular level, consciousness level, deep down into, I'm really trying to birth something. There's something coming out of me, coming through me, I'm going into and kind of merging with and meeting and embracing. And music really helps to, I think, just shift us out of our normal kind of left brain rational mind, so we can really meet the unknowable within us.
Yeah, and even in I think it's the next one, but music, using music during a session, getting up and dancing or moving with it. In my last session, I actually started like humming and singing. I felt like there was something in me. It's something that's been in me my whole life, I think, that like has never been let out. And I was holding it back, and then I was like, I'm just gonna let it out. Like, just started like humming, and I don't know, it just, something wanted to come out. I'm like, oh, all right, this is why I'm here. I'm gonna let it out. And so for me, it's also like, as individuals, whether we're musicians or not, whether we identify as artists, like we all are creative beings. Like, I truly believe that. And there's a lot of suppression with like, oh, I'm not good, so I'm not gonna sing. But it's like, music it's powerful to create also, whether we share it or whether we're just like playing our favorite song and singing in the car. I actually had a realization, through this process, like just of the medicine of music, not just in psychedelic therapy. Like, it truly is medicine. It connects people. And, when we get in the psychedelic space, it's like, well, have you tried other things? Or, yeah, of course there's other ways to heal. This is one that we really are fans of, and they work alongside others. But yeah, it was just really, it's beautiful to see like work being done in the space and measuring it on the brain, because obviously research is king. So yeah, that was cool.
And I assume what they did here was just take the data sample from some of the main study that was being done by the Imperial College crew. So folks like, David Nutt, Robin Carhart Harris, Leo Rosman, Mendel Kalin, and then just ran the data through, different kind of analysis looking at this kind of music piece. And I wanted to just say ALFF stands for Amplitude of Low Frequency Fluctuations, if anybody wants to check that out. Anything else on this article you wanted to cover?
I don't think so.
All right, well, I'm going to now have a halftime break and say to folks, before we look at the new article, Alexa, talking about music, hey, you got to tell people about your music. Come on, what's happening in the world of music right now?
Yeah, so I'm really excited. It's actually very serendipitous that today, when you're listening to this, is May 19th. I released today a song called Hourglass that is really healing to me. So it's out on all platforms. My name's Alexa Jesse, and it's with a group in San Francisco called Host Bodies. It's a collaboration with these producers, and yeah, it's a really special song. They sent it to me during the pandemic 2 years ago, actually, and I was not creating during the pandemic. I was dealing with a family member with cancer, and there was a lot of, like, oh, I should be creating, like, there's nothing else going on. All of these artists, came out of the pandemic with albums, and I was like, I came out of the pandemic 2 years ago with Hourglass, and I'm so excited to finally share it. I haven't released new music in years, and I'm hoping to just kind of continue to create. And it's something that is very closely tied to my work with psychedelics, because it's come up so strongly in my ketamine sessions that, like, I need to just get it out there. It's what am I afraid of? I think it's like part of my healing is to create it and to share it. And I hope everyone likes it.
Amazing. Yeah, that was cool that you just said it that way, because when you were talking about your ketamine experience, there's a part of you that said, just let it out, just get it out. And I think we can all relate to that. Like, there's something inside of us, and it doesn't have to be this like sticky, painful thing, not all the time at least. And the beauty of singing can be so healing, and that can actually get out what needs to be out, but surrounded by beauty. And in a sense, that goes nicely into our next article, which is looking at MDMA, and it's called The Healing Beauty of Ecstasy. It's by Kira Callahan, psychedelicscene.com. And the reason I'm saying that is, MDMA is kind of famous for working with PTSD because it helps us to connect with the trauma, and to kind of wrap it around more like a warm, loving embrace, kind of metaphorically speaking, to have this non-judgmental mind that we can kind of re-look at and reprocess and heal past traumas and stuckness and pain that's been kind of hiding inside of us. So, I really feel like, the music can do that, and MDMA is great for that. So this is a trip report of a woman in her 50s. She'd never experimented with drugs. She was pretty, psychedelic naive in a sense. And it's, a pretty short article about her experience of like, wow, that's what it's like. Now I get it. And she's really interested in learning more about this, and it opens up a lot inside of her. And my main takeaway is we don't hear enough trip reports from people. We hear about the amazing experiences where people's lives are healed from in the jungles of the Amazon from ayahuasca, and then we hear about, oh my God, I had this terrible experience and jumped out of a window, or ended up in a hospital, and but there's just so much in the middle there. I was like, well, it gave me lots of insights, and it also gave me lots of questions and challenges and things to work on in the future. I think we just don't hear enough of that. Those kinds of trip reports. And for me, that's just where we need to be in kind of public media, is just talking through, this is what my experiences was, and this is where I want to go with it. And okay, this is what it means to me. They're just simple, just kind of plain English language, not clinical science stuff, and no hype and no fear-mongering bullshit either. Just real people just expressing their real words about it. So I really love this article, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. And I agree. It was really just a story from like an average woman who isn't your typical, she's not a psychonaut. She, she wanted another option, and it seems to be really helpful for her. I think she's like doing ongoing MDMA therapy, and I really just related to it. And I think what's also so fascinating is, her work was with MDMA, but a lot of what she was saying is true for so many psychedelic experiences that it's interesting. Like, yes, they all work differently, but yet a lot of what's happening is not that different. It's like, choose the medicine that you feel called to. I think you're gonna get what you need. One quote that really stood out to me was, over several hours I experienced waves of challenging emotions, periods of great bliss and freedom, and stretches of peaceful rest. Insights and wisdoms came through, not from John, the facilitator, but from somewhere within, about how to move forward in various situations in my life. And I think this paragraph, this quote, like really, you hear like one psychedelic therapy session is like a decade of therapy, traditional therapy. And I've been in traditional therapy for almost a decade, and I wouldn't say I would, change that. I love my therapist, but it really packs so much in. It's crazy what your mind processes in an hour. Hers was 6 hours. But the other part of that, the range of emotions that you go through, it's bliss, it's fear, it's it's a lot of what we're experiencing every day that we don't really feel. You know, we don't take the time. But if you look at your day, it's like you just spilled your coffee and we're like all flustered and you're like, F-bomb a couple times. But like we've all freaking been there, you know, and it's the worst. And then you have probably moments with your kid where you're just like, oh, this is bliss. And like that is the human experience. But I think when you're in there, you like see it. You're like, wow, like there's a lot of this in there. And then there's also this really amazing stuff in there. And it kind of helps it's like let go of the stuff we don't want or need or, you know, anymore, and like make more room for more of the good. And then the other second part of the quote, which I really loved, was that the insights and wisdoms came through about how to move forward in various situations. And I've just experienced that in the past 3-4 weeks of like this clarity that just, you know, we question and ruminate over these decisions in our lives, and we like stress about what to do. And it's like a light bulb of like, oh, this is what to do it, done, and like move on. And it's quite incredible. And I don't want to believe that, you know, psychedelics are the only way to get there. I have trouble meditating, but I actually have been meditating since my psychedelic therapy. And I feel like I have more of that guidance in therapy, if that makes sense. Like there's takeaways, and that's why I think integration is so, so important. And it's really like can kickstart a mindful journey. But yeah, what else did you see in this one? Anything?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what you're saying. I love what you're sharing there. Thanks, Alexa. So this woman was talking about her experience, and the therapist was great, John. But it sounds like she's coming into contact with her shadow for the first time. And she's kind of grateful for that. And I feel like we all have shadows, and the longer and further that they're kind of disconnected from our lived reality, the harder it is to live in our fullness. And it was really beautiful just to see, like, in a sense, how the shadow surfaces for just a regular human being, which we all are, and how simple it is. Like you were just saying, it's just so simple, just getting clearly, oh, I need to do that. Or, oh, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. You know, these aspects of our shadow, of parts of us that we often don't have time, or we have restricted ourselves from acknowledging, they have messages of wisdom that we need to hear. And I just love that, you know, this is just kind of normalizing psychedelics in a very, very, you know, in a sense, a non-clinical way, but also in a non-woo-woo way, just in a very, you know, natural way. And again, it's emphasizing now this woman is going away and she's got a lot of work to do. And she's kind of excited by that, a little bit like, oh my God, as well. But she's down for it. Like, she really wants to engage and have that curiosity about what happens next.
Yeah, I think it's less overwhelming when you get some clarity on like, okay, there's one step, just do that step first, you know, instead of just feeling lost and, you know, unsupported. It really, it's beautiful. Yeah. So definitely encourage everyone to check out the article. I would say specifically, share with like people you know who maybe are on the fence. Like, it's a really good perspective. You know, this woman, I just want to read one more quote and then we can move on. But she says, "I'm embarrassed at my previous ignorance and judgments in a world where opioids and alcohol are killing hundreds of thousands of people every year, but fully legal magic mushrooms and ecstasy with their healing potential and much higher safety profile are illegal while millions suffer from a myriad of poorly treated mental health conditions. Something is out of whack." And I think it's like, you know, one person at a time to make that shift in realization of what is working or what is current, like, does not work. You know, that's what we need. We just need people to realize that the current medical system is so broken, and there's really hope in plant medicine. So yeah, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. And I wanted to also say, if folks want to check out other trip reports, a good place to go is erowid.org. So that's spelled EROWID. And we'll put that in the show notes. So yeah, lots of good information over there. All right, Alexa. So the next article is about New Hampshire and cannabis. So we're going to literally get into the weeds of kind of local, you know, regulation and debates and votes. So the article's in High Times, and it is titled New Hampshire Senate Votes Down Cannabis Legalization Bill. It's by A.J. Harrington, and it looks like the vote passed in the House, and then when it got to the state Senate, it didn't pass. And the main man of the Senate of the state, I can't remember.
I think it was Republican Senator Jeb Bradley, I believe.
Yeah, never know what they call these people in America. Yeah, it looks like it's very much following party lines. So, Republican and Democrat, kind of yay and nay, as we'd expect pretty much. But interestingly, the bill was to decriminalize it for folks over the age of 21. And it was going to have a tax of 12.5% on cultivation of cannabis. And yeah, pretty high, limits, but sufficient. I think it was, possession up to 3/4 of an ounce of cannabis would have a fine of $100.
Yeah, so this was, their recreational vote, and they, voted against rec. And I'm angry about this because the reasonings that, the Senate stated was, this as the state combats a drug addiction and overdose crisis, it's not the right time to legalize marijuana, would send a confusing message, potentially exacerbating the already perilous drug landscape and placing more lives at risk. And this is just so backwards. It is infuriating, honestly, that the reason was to protect our kids. This is drug war mentality. And not only that, but it's not the current law, simple possession of up to 3/4 of an ounce of cannabis is a civil offense subject to a fine. But cannabis amounts greater than that is a misdemeanor punishable by up to 1 year in jail. So they're still able to throw people in jail for an ounce of weed. And I'm sure they do. And it's just, it's tough for me. Cannabis is my Tylenol. I quit Tylenol. I save it for really special times if I really have a bad headache or something. But I think, it's just crazy to me. And what's interesting too is, one of the Democrats who are in favor were saying all of our people are just going across state lines and supporting, our neighbors. And those are people who can afford and have the resources. And of course, the ones who can't are going to be buying it underground. And then they're the ones that are at risk. And it's just disproportionately impacting communities of color. And it's all the same story. But I think the fact that they were just saying it's because of the opioid crisis, personally, I've mentioned this to you, but I was in a really serious car accident and cannabis got me off of opioids. I was on opioids for 8 months. I was on muscle relaxers and painkillers and nerve meds. And the whole time I was weaning myself off. But I was, opioids exist for a reason. I was in a traumatic car accident. But I use cannabis daily. And it's not just, ounces of flower and vapes that people want. Tinctures and capsules, specifically patches, are so amazing. Nobody talks about patches. Patches are I hoard them because they're harder to get because they're not as in demand and they're freaking expensive. So I have to save them for plane rides or long car rides. But it's just, it's lack of education. And I feel bad for people in New Hampshire that don't have safe access. And I hope that, eventually they get there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I haven't heard of patches either, Alexa. That
amazing.
Sounds amazing. Things like plane rides.
Yeah. Specifically,
you don't have many other options there.
Specifically, THCA patches. So they're non-psychoactive. You literally do not feel high. They are really amazing for nerve pain. So sciatica, for people with back issues who, sitting is really painful. Mary's medicinals are the best patches. They're out of California, but huge shout to Mary's because they really help me. And what's crazy though is they're $12 a patch and it's a single use. And so how are we ever going to get to insurance covering this medicine when we're not even acknowledging it, And I'm again, I just choose to spend my money on it because I need it. But I guess the point being is I think I would be on opioids if it wasn't for cannabis. And so it's not an accurate argument. But it's, public perception. There are parents who still are scared of weed, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, right?
And Alexa, I'm assuming, have you figured this all out yourself about what works, what different kind of modalities of cannabis, and when and why and how? Or have you worked with like a prescriber or dispensary to kind of give you that kind of guidance?
I just experimented with myself after my car accident. And it's actually what led me into the industry was that question you just had. Like, I was looking for resources and really couldn't find any. And this was like, it's 7 years ago. This month was my car accident. So it was around that time. And I was like eating gummies because that's what people did, and that's what they still do. But I was like, I don't want to just eat candy. So I just started experimenting, and I did end up getting a bud tending job, actually. And I worked in a dispensary for a couple of years, and I was actually the top sales rep because I was selling people tinctures and capsules, which, you might be spending $60 on a tincture, but you could be getting 600 milligrams of cannabinoids versus you're spending $20 to get 20 milligrams. Like, it's actually a better value to get a more potent product, and it lasts longer. And so education. I love tinctures. They're really great for anxiety and could do a whole spiel. But that's really what we were talking about at my apartment, last week, was really just introducing people to what dosing, like what are these different methods. Like, people just, unfortunately, dispensaries there's no training, or at least not training for really the medical patient. So I encourage bud tenders to kind of step up their game a bit so people have safe places to buy.
Yeah, medicine, the people's medicine. I wanted to make one final point about this. We're talking about, recreational use here, so thanks for making sure we were clear on that one. The actual bill was proposing to have whatever, state Department of Alcohol Enforcement also to be changed to the State Department of Alcohol and Cannabis Enforcement or Regulation. So they're kind of putting them together. So it raises that question, doesn't it? Why is alcohol okay but not cannabis? They've got all of these liquor stores, and it's regulated by the state around laws, and then you've got people selling that. And do you have people prescribing alcohol for pain or for trauma or depression, saying, oh yeah, you need a bottle of rum for that, PTSD, or get a 6-pack of, Heineken for your depression, that'll, you don't. No one's ever going to prescribe you alcohol for anything ever, literally.
I can imagine.
It just seems like a complete, it's just bullshit that they're using these arguments. It's because of the kids.
Right.
So if they really cared about it, they would have proper education and data and facts around drug harms. And alcohol is infinitely more harmful and does huge amounts of damage on every way of measuring it. I just don't believe any of this stuff, these reasons. So it actually looks like, looking at some of the finer print, New Hampshire actually just wants to control the entire industry in their state so that they can get more tax dollars from it.
Yep.
From setting up dispensaries and production and testing perhaps. And it's similar a bit to what I've seen in Canada as well, where each province has its own kind of regulatory board, and that province kind of gets a lot more kind of control over the dispensaries they're actually kind of licensed by and part of the province there. So I think they're trying to use that model a bit more.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. When you were just saying that, I was imagining that poor guy in Colorado, selling mushrooms on the side of the road, and just like some guy setting up, with tequila, like hugs and tequila. Like, I don't know what would happen to that guy, but
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy, isn't it? That one is totally fine and the other is like, oh no.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is quite funny. I watched the video.
So did I.
Did you check it out? Yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah.
So this is it's an article and a video, and it's called "How Much Would You Expect to Pay for Psilocybin Mushroom Therapy?" The article's by Aaron Mesh, and the video by Zave Payne, and it's in wweek.com. It's like a 2-3 minute video of literally just stopping people on the street and say, "Hey, how much would you pay to microdose, psilocybin mushrooms? How much would you pay for like a hero's dose, to get in to sit with a therapist to do that with?" And it was fascinating to see the answers that people came up with. Most of them were saying, oh yeah, something like for a microdose, yeah, maybe $25, $50, something like that. Or for a macrodose, yeah, 6-hour session, I'd pay, a couple $100 for that. And really, that would be great, wouldn't it, if it was that affordable and accessible? But yeah, and this is coming as a response to the pricing that was announced, I think, last week by a psilocybin service center called Epic Healing Eugene, where, a microdose is going to charge $500 for 2 hours. And for a 6-hour hero dose, it's going to cost, around about $3,500. So when you compare that to what people think, it's like, oh, there's quite a discrepancy there. So are people actually going to want to do this? Who is going to be able to afford this?
Yeah.
It was just, and it was done in just a fun and really kind of grassroots, kind of normative research way. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, it made me a little sad though, because just realizing the misalignment of expectations for like the average person who doesn't, is not in the industry. The fact that they're thinking, oh, $25, it's like, are they ever going to pay $500? Like, are they ever going to think that that's worth it when their just association is so drastically different? And I think for us, like, yes, it's insanely expensive. I think we also have a bit more of an understanding of like what these people not only have invested in their businesses, going against the grain, and in their trainings and the overhead and the ongoing support, like all the things that are why, it's costing this much. But it's just the first drop in the bucket of like, accessibility. Like how is this going to work really? And it's a little scary.
Yeah, it raises a lot of questions. It's kind of comical and light and funny, but this is actually super, super serious and important to figure out how to make this accessible. And I can be honest, like last week, I visited the doctor twice, so I get a $75 copay each time. And I would have gone again, just because I was like, I'm not getting better. But I didn't want to pay another $75, like 3 times in a week. Isn't that crazy? And this, we're talking about like $3,500 for a 6-hour session. If I really, really need that, like, am I going to wait till I'm really suicidal and then I'm going to try and get it? Or will I actually do it proactively and say, you know what, I'm feeling a bit down lately. I think I need to microdose. Or, I'm going to try this psilocybin service in Eugene. What level of acuity are people going to need to access this treatment? Because it's really expensive in America. And I can just speak to that. It's hard to justify these kinds of expenses when we just, like me, stressed and running around and spilling coffee everywhere.
Yeah, no. One thing also that on Epic Healing's like menu, the medicine is actually not included. That is a separate cost. There's tax on that. So this is even just like the bare minimum. But what I did also see is they will be offering group therapy. And I think that's something that maybe is part of the like bridge to accessibility, is getting people together and trying to do this in groups. Because I have done a group ceremony before, and if you have enough support with facilitators, per person, it can be a deeply personal experience. So yeah, maybe there's some, hope or more options there in the group route.
Yeah, big time. I think quite a few people are looking at those models because we simply just have to make it more affordable, and that is one of the only ways I think of doing it, at least in the short term. And then the last article actually also had a quote about the psilocybin service centers in Oregon by Sam Chapman from Healing Advocacy Fund. He's predicting that by the end of this year that we'll have around a dozen service centers licensed and serving clients in Oregon. So right now there's just that one we just spoke about. So he's saying, by the end of the year, it'll be 12. So will competition drive prices down? Well, maybe a little bit, but probably not that much, just because there's such huge costs. And like we've been saying for a few weeks, you can't use costs as tax deductions. So they're just 100% pure costs, So it's really, really expensive to do this kind of operation right now. All right. So yeah, I know you got a lot from this last article. So do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah. So this was pretty exciting to me. Touring the first Oregon lab licensed to test the strength of legal psilocybin by Jamie Parfit and Colton Weekly on kgw.com. And this was actually like a news segment, which is pretty cool, like a local news segment. And they basically went on a tour, the reporters, of Rose City Labs, the first organ testing lab. And it's really exciting to see, Oregon is really building the infrastructure for this industry. So the legal supply chain is complete. There's licenses for service centers, which I'm assuming are retailers. There's manufacturers and testing labs, and also facilitator licenses. And so they're definitely giving like a 101 to the people, like, okay, like, Oregon, here we are. This is what it looks like. And so there's manufacturers who are licensed to grow mushrooms, and then they can send samples out to the labs, and that's who they were interviewing. And I actually thought it was really beautiful. They interviewed Dan Hewson, who is the owner of the lab, and he was talking about his personal mission for why he opened the lab and why he's doing this work. And he, I think he said his mom or someone in his family had cancer. He also had cancer and turned to alternative medicine when traditional pharmaceutical medications were not working for him. He talks about all of these side effects causing more issues. And I just really loved that this, he was sharing his story in such a public, news forum. And, as I mentioned before, like what I was saying about cannabis and dosing is such a huge, it's everything when it comes to consuming plant medicine. Same thing with pharmaceutical medicines, right? Like you take a certain dose and then you increase or you decrease, and there's just no education. All of the packaging is all different. People don't understand milligrams versus grams. And like, I've just always been such a huge proponent of like, first we need to understand, consumers need to understand the amount they're eating and how they're feeling. And then from there, and so I think it's really exciting to see this happening in mushrooms and psychedelics. I think for people to really learn how to trust this medicine, for like that knowledge has to be there so they can look at this, package of mushrooms and be like, okay, this is X amount of psilocybin. And yes, people can grow them. Lab testing is becoming more common, even for underground products I've seen out and about, which is awesome. Like we have labs that are opening, whether they're like legal or not. But it's really amazing to see that obviously this is legal and being, I think it's definitely going to help public perception of safety. They're testing for, mold and all sorts of carcinogens, and really they're finding psilocybin.
Yeah. It's probably the least of the full licenses that people are interested in testing. It's like, what, okay, yeah, whatever, because everyone wants the production and the service center recreational side of it, and then, the facilitator holding space. But yeah, the testing pieces, you have to have it, like you really do. But like exactly for what you're saying, the standardization, predictability of dose.
Right.
You want to know, like, how much am I taking? Oh, next time I'll have a little bit less, or maybe a little bit more. And just knowing exactly how much you're taking really helps to do that. And so, yeah, they're using real mushrooms here, not synthetic. And you can know the dose that you're taking. You can actually, within the regulations, you can choose different dosage sizes. And there is a maximum. I can't remember how many grams. I think it might have been 5 or 6. But, there's different dosages you can have, and different time scales of how long you need to be on the premises for based on how much you're taking. So it really gives you a choice just to slowly work a relationship up with the medicine, with your experience, not rushing it. But at the same time, if there's 3.5 grand, how many people are going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to start with just 0.5 gram and see how it goes, Right. People are like, wow, I've got one shot at this. This is my life savings kind of thing.
No,
give me the maximum I can have, please, because I really need some healing right now. So it's a perverse incentive, isn't it, around being able to take it slowly and not rushing it and just seeing what is right for me right now.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm sure the retailers or the service provider business model will adapt, because I would imagine before someone's doing this microdosing $500, 2-hour session, they'd want to have a couple phone calls or one phone call, or maybe there's like Zoom calls, I think education pre session will hopefully help with people make that decision. If they're like, okay, I've learned now that like, maybe one day I'll want a 3.5 gram, macro dose, but like, I think 2 grams, like, or 2.5, there's like, it's such a spectrum. And I was thinking about this too, like you cannot compare cannabis to psilocybin in terms of dosing. Like, it's completely different. Psilocybin is such a potent product. It's like you have 10 milligrams of cannabis, which is very high for me. I like my 3 milligrams, my edibles. But when you translate it over, it's not the same. So that's even more confusing in terms of like, you might think and you just really don't. And so there are definitely like dosing guides out there, but I think until you really take it and feel it, that's the only way to like journal it. I know we have a trip journal. I think it's really important to just track and like trust our bodies. Like, our bodies are the first, healer. They know. And I think that's also why preparation is so important. And hopefully these service centers are offering preparation sessions to, like, one thing I've just feeling is really interesting about the ketamine therapy I'm going through is anytime you have like a question, or I have a question, they're like, okay, ask yourself. It's like, don't ask me, like ask yourself. And I'm like, oh, and like, they really encourage you to like dig deeper. And it's pretty amazing to find out the wisdom that is in us. And sometimes we just need someone else to be like, yeah, trust yourself. Like, you got this. It's like what you were saying about facilitators being like a cheerleader or like the midwife. It's like, it's true. They're just there to hold your hand and be like, you can do this. They're not really they're not doing anything. I mean, they are, of course, we need support. I mean, it just also shows how powerfully healing, like communal healing, is, even with just one other person.
Yeah, I love that. And so much of the healing itself is simply us reconnecting with our body and with the messages that it's constantly sending to us about how am I feeling? Is this the right amount, too much or too little? How is this affecting me? Where's my energy at? Like, and the body is just so wise. Mm-hmm. It's just, it just sends us signals constantly, and I think we tend to be really disconnected, and microdosing has really helped, and macrodosing really helped me reconnect with my body. And I found some old wounds and injuries physically that my body's accumulated, and just feeling energy more profoundly. I just love the concept of our body's energy fields, and sometimes feeling them, and breath work really helps for that. So at the beginning of our podcast today, Alexa, we took those breaths for like 20-30 seconds. I've just felt my whole being return, just from taking a break of 30 seconds. And that's the energy of just returning and restoring and flowing and kind of reunifying self and consciousness. And love it.
Yeah. One more thing I just want to add on this last one is they gave a shout to PsyCon, which is a psychedelic convention happening in Oregon. And there's going to be another one in, I believe, September in Denver that Joe is going to be speaking at. And, we're trying to figure out how to participate with them. So, I just wanted to give them a shout. They're a new conference, and it's really amazing because there was another conference in Phoenix that just happened, and I heard they sold out. And it's really cool to see these like psychedelic shows on tour and realizing that it's not just for industry. It's for people, people wanting to get into the industry and people just wanting to learn. I mean, at these events, the education on, like, they're the real pros, on stage there. So yeah, it's really exciting to just see that, like, making the news, local news, like check out this psychedelic conference going on. I'm like, that's rad. I love the West Coast.
Yeah, I watched that video as well. It was really funny seeing that newscaster, whatever you call him, talking about PsyCon, It's like talking about the psychedelic conference, it's coming to town. It's like, whoa. It's just
like
so
the circus.
Yeah. Like aliens are coming, and like, but in a cool way. Yeah, it's great to see, isn't it? Just real people saying, oh, I've heard about that stuff. I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish
All right,
I could.
Well, yeah, this has been lovely, Alexa. Really nice.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I definitely learned a lot. And I don't know, do we got anything else we want to share with the audience?
No, just I feel much better, to be honest, just from talking and having real human contact today and just chatting.
Amazing.
It's been really cool. I hope you enjoyed listening, folks. Thanks for having us.
I guess one thing I'll say is if you're going to be in Denver for Psych Sciences, we've got a crew of about 9 of us that are going to be there. We're going to have a booth with some chill area to sit and decompress, and some maybe more exciting news about Denver coming soon. So just stay tuned. Yeah,
and we'll put the discount code for Psychedelic Science in our show notes because, I don't know it off the top of my head. I won't be there, unfortunately. But you'll be there. Yeah, loads of the team are going. So I got a bit of FOMO there.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be fun. But yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. Same thing with the discount code for Hemp Lucid if you want to try out some CBD. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for listening to Psychedelics Weekly, everyone. Take care.